The mess hall on Harkin Station was warm, loud, and filled with the usual bravado of young Graxian cadets who had never seen true war. The floor trembled faintly with the vibrations of distant hangars and engine hums. But inside, laughter and arguments echoed under the glow of sterile lights. They gathered there every week to eat, to argue tactics, to boast. But this time, they had a visitor, an old war general, whose very name still caused silence among veterans. General Threxil of the Graxian High Command. His shell had dulled too. A faded bronze and jagged scars stretched across the chitin that once gleamed with pride. 4 of his 6 limbs were wrapped in regulation plating, worn but functional. He did not speak often these days, not unless it mattered. The cadets watched as Threxil settled into the center table, silent as ever. Only when the room began to hush did he raise his head. "You think war is banners and orders," he said, his voice scraping like stone. "You think it's simulations and formations. No, let me tell you what it really is." His compound eyes settled on Lieutenant Vasha, a bright young cadet who had spent the last hour boasting about strategy. "Polaris X," Threxil said, "frozen deathworld. Our scans said it was abandoned, a mining colony with nothing left but ice and wreckage. Intelligence said we'd sweep through in 2 days." The room grew still. "I led a full battalion of cold-adapted Graxian troops," Threxil continued. "Elite, conditioned for sub-zero combat. We landed during a whiteout storm visibility. 10 meters. The wind was like knives. I remember the sound. Always the wind." He paused, and his clawed hand curled slowly. "We lost contact with Echo Squad 5 minutes in static. Then he mimicked a soft pop with his mandibles. Just that. A brief crack. A scream. Then silence. The cadets exchanged glances. No one interrupted. Then Delta Squad. Same. Gone in under 2 minutes. No enemy fire detected. No heat signatures. Just ... gone. And the storm screamed on." Vasha frowned. "You were being hunted." Threxil's head turned toward her, slow and deliberate. "No, we were being studied, herded. One by one, squads vanished. Comes picked up whispers short, sharp breaths, laughs. Once, a voice ... singing." The mess hall was now dead silent. By the 6th hour, we realized we weren't facing a force, just one human, a sniper. He leaned forward, voice lowering. She wasn't part of any unit, a civilian teenager. No armor, just a rifle and enough hate to fuel a campaign. "That's impossible," Vasha whispered. I watched her take out a gunner through 3 meters of blowing snow. Shot came from the shadow of a fractured tower. We sent drones. They crashed. Sent hounds. They turned on each other in panic. "Did you ever see her?" someone asked. Threxil stared past them. "Only once. Just a shape in the white. Small. Fragile. She moved like smoke. I saw her eyes. Not rage. Not madness. Focus. Cold focus." "And then?" Vasha asked, voice tight. "We withdrew. 37 dead, 94 injured. Entire battalion evacuated by dusk. 1 girl. 1 rifle. That's when I stopped believing in numbers. That's when I understood what a human really is." He looked around at the quiet cadets. "You want to defeat humanity? Learn how to fight a ghost." And then he said nothing more. ChatGPT said. The next day, the mess hall was packed even before General Threxil arrived. Word of his tale had spread across Harkin Station like fire in dry underbrush. Some cadets claimed he was exaggerating. Others stayed silent, haunted by the way he spoke slow, cold, like a man still trapped in the blizzard of Polaris X. When the old war veteran finally entered, the air changed. Conversation dimmed. Even the serving droids seemed to slow down. General Threxel didn't speak right away. He sat down at the center table again, scanning the room with those scarred, expressionless compound eyes. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than before, but somehow sharper, more personal. You listened yesterday. That's good. But you still don't understand. He turned toward Lieutenant Vasha, who sat straighter, her green-gray carapace polished to perfection. You still think Polaris was an anomaly, a ghost with a gun, an isolated story. Vasha opened her mandibles slightly, but said nothing. It wasn't, Threxel said. There was another world, more brutal, more costly, where we believed, truly, we had the upper claw, until we met someone named Harper. He let the name hang there, heavy as metal. System designation, 374. Humans called it Aldrin's Reach, small colony. Agricultural, defenseless, so we thought. Threxel took a slow sip of nutrient broth, then set the cup down with a soft metallic click. We landed with 2 drop carriers and armored support. No resistance at first. Just empty fields, broken houses. Looked like they had fled. We laughed. His mandibles pulled tight in something not quite a smile. But we stopped laughing when the ground exploded. Beneath our forward base. Entire platoon vaporized. Tunnels, old irrigation systems repurposed, laced with high-yield fertilizer bombs. He gestured with one arm, slicing the air. Then came the drones. Human farmer drones. Small, harmless, autonomous machines, modified to carry short-range EMP bursts. Every time we activated sensors, they blinked out, blinded us. Then they'd detonate. Who did it? Asked one of the younger cadets. What unit? No unit, Threxel replied. Just Harper, one man, a farmer. Silence. He had stayed behind when the colony evacuated. Hid underground, not to survive, but to destroy us. One by one, Threxel leaned in, his voice like wind scraping over steel. He set traps using scrap metal and battery acid, built targeting systems out of broken children's toys, made spears from tractor parts. And always he watched us. You saw him? Vasha asked, almost a whisper. I heard him first, Threxel said. He sang. Sang? Another cadet scoffed. Threxel turned, slow and deliberate. He sang old Earth songs, slow ones, about rivers and fields. And war. I heard his voice through the static of our broken combs. Sometimes I still hear it when I sleep. The cadets were frozen. By the 5th day, morale was collapsing. Troops refused to enter the fields. One of our commanders ordered a full forward charge. Harper collapsed the grain silos, buried 3 transports in dust and fire. Threxel's breath rattled for a moment, like a memory was crawling up from the pit of his chest. I saw him once, just once. At night, after the windstorm cleared. He was standing in the ruins of a barn, rifle slung across his back. Looked at us. No armor, no helmet. Just a long coat and blood on his hands. And he smiled. Not cruel, not smug, just ... Calm. A long pause. He disabled an entire battalion, with farm tools and hatred. And when we finally pulled out, when we left Aldrin's Reach in flames, Harper was still there, watching, standing in the ash. Vasha swallowed hard. Did you try to capture him? Threxel's mandibles twitched. He walked into our forward outpost 2 days later, unarmed, covered in soot, said only one thing. He looked at the cadets, voice flat. I've got no more traps, but if you come back, I'll learn how to make more. The silence in the hall was absolute. And that, Threxel said, is when I began to fear humans not for their weapons, but for their imagination. He leaned back slowly, his eyes drifting over the frozen faces of the young officers. "You wanted tales of human warfare," he rasped. "Understand this. You're not fighting soldiers. You're fighting survivors. Builders, monsters who smile before they burn." He stood. "I'll return tomorrow, if you still want to listen." And then he left them there, staring into silence and hearing phantom songs echoing in their minds. The third night came like a storm. The mess hall was standing room only. Not just cadets, now seasoned officers, data analysts, even a few fleet captains had shown up in silent curiosity. No one laughed. No one drank. They waited. And when General Threxel entered, they stood. He walked slower tonight. Not from age, but from the weight of memory. His breath came in slow hisses, and the soft clack of his foot talons echoed loud against the polished floors. He took his usual seat at the center table and motioned for the lights to dim. The serving droids halted. No one spoke. His voice cut through the silence like a blade. "You still don't understand," he said. "You think humans are unpredictable because they use old guns, old tools, old tricks. But the worst ones don't use anything at all." A ripple moved through the room. "We called it Facility 11X on planet Tiroth. It was a prison. Off the books, deep underground, not supposed to exist." Lieutenant Vasha shifted in her seat, but said nothing. "We took a human captain alive during a raid on Talon Ridge. Malik Viaran, mid-level officer. Smart, quiet, no military record before the war. Looked like nothing." Threxel's voice lowered, slower now. "He wasn't just telling a story. He was back there. We brought him to 11X. 5 floors of reinforced alloy, psychic shielding, null gravity cells. The kind of place meant to break monsters. He didn't speak for 2 days. Just sat there, watching the walls. And then the deaths began. A chill spread across the room. First, a technician. Found in a storage shaft. No injuries. Just dead. Then 2 guards locks still sealed. Cameras caught nothing. Internal sensors failed. He paused. We checked Vren's cell. He was there, eyes closed, breathing slow. More deaths followed. A plasma core melted in its housing. 2 staff. Members locked themselves in a room and never came out. 1 officer walked into a sealed hallway and was never found. "We thought it was sabotage," Threxel said. "We assumed infiltrators, internal breach. But there wasn't. Just Viaran." He started whispering, not to us, to someone. No translator could pick it up, language unknown. But it followed. A rhythm like breathing, or prayer. The lights in the mess hall dimmed slightly, as if the room itself were listening. Then came the voices, not from him, from the station. Doors opened when no one touched them. Lights flickered in patterns that matched old Earth Morse. Some of the staff reported, seeing things in the mirrors. He closed his eyes for a moment. "I lost 6 of my own people in that place, none of them killed by weapons. They drowned in empty rooms, froze in powered corridors. One was found with his own blood spelling out a word on the wall. Listen, what happened to Viaran?" Vasha whispered. Threxel opened his eyes. They glimmered with a sheen of fear that didn't match his size or armor. "We went to execute him." 3 guards entered his cell. 1 shot him point blank. Center mass. Viaran fell. Another pause. He stood up 12 seconds later. Gasps rippled through the room. No armor. No shield. Just skin and something inside him that refused to stop. He looked at the guards and said, "That wasn't enough?" What was he? Someone asked, too quietly. "Human," Threxel said. "Just human. A broken one. One who'd lost everything. One who decided to become fear itself." They all sat frozen, as if movement might wake something watching. We abandoned 11X the next day, sealed the tunnels, orbited the planet with kinetic mines. Viorn was never found. Some say he walked out. Others say he never existed at all. The general leaned forward. You think human warfare is bullets and bombs. No, it's minds that don't break the way ours do. It's silence that kills. It's pain that doesn't end. It's a will so sharp it cuts to reality. He stood. Tomorrow, I'll tell you about what happened when we tried to corner them. And then he walked out, leaving behind only shadows, silence, and whispers that weren't supposed to be there. On the fourth night, the mess hall no longer felt like a place to eat. The long tables had been rearranged into quiet rows. Officers who once laughed through meals now sat straight-backed and silent. Even the command instructors who had dismissed General Threxel's tailies earlier in the week were present hollow-eyed, unsettled. No one dared mock the stories anymore. When the old Graxian entered, the air grew colder, as if the very walls braced themselves. He didn't bother with small talk or greetings. He sat, exhaled slowly through mandibles scarred with old burns, and let the silence stretch until the tension hurt. Then he began. By the time we reached Vecton's cradle, we thought we had them. The cadets leaned forward. It was the last major human holdout in the sector. A rocky moon wrapped in automated defenses, with one orbital station and 6 underground shelters. We had them surrounded. 3 full Graxian fleets. 6 months of tactical simulation. A perfect trap. He tapped a scar on his plated jaw. They walked into it willingly. Even that simple line made spines stiffen. The human force, just under 400 troops, entered the trap corridors beneath the surface. We sealed them in. No way out. They couldn't call for help. No resupply. We cut off oxygen lines, sent in pulse drones, gravity mines. He paused. His voice was colder now. They didn't panic. They disappeared. Lieutenant Vasha blinked. Disappeared? They vanished, Threxel replied. Gone, as if the tunnels had swallowed them. We sent recon teams. They never came back. We dropped beacon flares. No response. No visuals. Nothing. He leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice. We weren't fighting in tunnels anymore. We were fighting inside a riddle. The officers said nothing. Our sensors started feeding false data human signals on both ends of the complex. Entire corridors looping back into themselves. One team reported seeing their own dead squadmates, walking silently ahead of them. Hallucinations? A communications officer asked. Threxel shook his head. We thought so too. Until those hallucinations started pulling triggers. He paused again, as if he were trying to keep something down. That's when we heard the voice. A woman's voice. Calm, even, coming over the coms. Our coms. No trace of origin. He looked at the cadets. You think you've cornered us? You're still outside the real fight. She repeated it over and over, Threxel said. Soft, never angry, just certain. And every time she said it, another unit vanished. The room was absolutely still. Her name was Captain Yana Sorrel. Our intelligence said she was a tactical advisor. Brilliant, logical, never saw frontline combat. We assumed she'd break under pressure. He shook his head slowly. She was designing the tunnels from inside, realigning doors, overloading panels, setting vent traps. One tech described her strategy as fighting in 4 dimensions. He stopped talking after that. Did you ever capture her? Masha asked. Yes, Threxel said. A flicker of hope crossed a few faces. Sort of. He looked into the air, as if seeing something far away. She walked out. Alone, burned, bleeding, her uniform in shreds. She carried a data core under one arm and a dead soldier over her. shoulder. The room held its breath. She laid the body down, saluted, and said, "He got us out. I came to return him." "And then?" someone asked. Threxel's voice turned grim. "She handed us the core. No weapons. No threats. And when we checked the tunnels, she had routed all human survivors through an underground lava vent that we had dismissed as inaccessible. She saved every last one of them." A long pause. "She lost an eye, half her lung capacity. Several of her bones were cracked. And she smiled the entire time she spoke with our medics." Threxel leaned back, his voice almost soft. "You know what the report said? Human tactical anomaly calm under impossible conditions. Prioritizes others. Displays zero panic response. Possible artificial emotional dampening." He scoffed. "No, that's just who she was." He stood slowly. She walked into our trap, turned it inside out, and left us thinking we were the ones who had survived. He glanced at Vasha one last time. "You want to understand human warfare? Learn this corner a beast, and it fights. Corner a human, and they build a door where one didn't exist." And then he walked out again, leaving the mess hall filled with silence, static, and the soft echo of a woman's voice whispering through imagined coms. "You're still." Outside the real fight. The fifth night came with tension so thick it felt like atmosphere on a gravity-crushed world. The mess hall was filled beyond capacity. Senior tacticians leaned against walls. Logistics officers skipped entire shifts just to listen. A broadcast. Drone hovered near the ceiling, quiet, invisible, blinking red. It was recording now. No one stopped it. No one dared. General Threxel entered slowly, his joints creaking louder than the floor beneath him. He didn't greet the room. He didn't nod. He just sat, stared at his hands for a long moment, and then spoke in a voice hollowed out by memory. "Have you ever seen a species stop sleeping?" He didn't wait for an answer. "Cradle Station 6, third orbit above Cygna 4, rotating habitat, civilian hub turned military outpost. Mostly human engineers, medics, support staff. No real defense. Grid." He glanced at a young communications officer. "Not a threat, right?" The officer didn't respond. "We blockaded it. Simple procedure. Lockdown, no entry, no exit. Supplies would run dry in 2 weeks. Easy target. We expected surrender within 5 days." He inhaled through his mandibles. Slow and sharp. Instead, the lights stayed on. The signal jammers reversed, and their transmission was one word: try. A soft murmur ran through the cadets. We began our insertion protocols on day 6. Entry pods. Breach teams, 0G boarding craft. We sent the best. He stopped, and his next words came cold. They were waiting for us. Not with guns, not with armor. With minds that refused to shut down. Threxel looked up now, his eyes glittering. They hadn't slept, not for days. They were running shifts on something called stim pulse cycling, short bursts of chemically enhanced wakefulness, combined with micronaps, AI-guided rotation schedules. It kept them all sharp. He let the word fall like a blade. No one panicked, no one made mistakes, no one blinked. He stood for a moment, walking slowly around the table. "You don't understand what it's like to fight someone who won't stop thinking." We breached one module airtight seal. They had reprogrammed the artificial gravity to flip mid-step. One squad lost their legs on impact with the ceiling. Pause. We breached another. No resistance at first. Just silence. Then their medics filled the corridor with cryovapors. Fog so dense our optics failed. They moved through it like it was home. We couldn't even see them before they disabled us. A deep breath. But it wasn't just the tactics. It was the tempo. He tapped his temple with a claw. Every time we adapted, they shifted. Every time we struck, they were already gone. Like chess, played 4 boards ahead. Who led them? Asked Vasha, her voice tight. Commander Rafe Dawson, Threxel said. Former surgeon. No battlefield experience. Just clarity. The kind you only get when you've held someone's heart in your hands and watched it stop. He stopped pacing. We tried to flood them out. Opened the atmosphere seals. They were already in pressure suits. We disabled lights. They rigged the station to strobe at low frequency and blinded us. We jammed their comms. They used Morse. Code in the light patterns of their emergency signals. His voice dropped lower. We had superior weapons, more troops. We owned the station by every metric. But after 40 hours, it was us asking for extraction. A cadet in the back whispered. You retreated? Threxel's head turned slowly toward him. We fled. Silence fell like a dropped corpse. Because by hour 41, our troops were collapsing from exhaustion. Our stimulant cocktails failed. Our command structure broke down. Humans, still moving, still calculating, still smiling. He leaned forward on the table, compound eyes, staring into the heart of every soul in the room. You want to break a human? Don't take their food. Don't take their weapons. Take their sleep. And then learn what it's like to fight a machine made of grief, caffeine, and purpose. He straightened. Commander Dawson finally surrendered the station, not because we beat him, but because he got a call. Another pause. His wife had gone into labor back on Earth. He'd done his job, saved every civilian on that station. And then, calmly, he walked into the airlock and sent us a message. Threxel's voice cracked just once. Send me home. I've got a daughter. Now, he looked at Vasha. I've fought plasma beasts. I've killed infiltrators that wore my brother's face. But I have never feared anything more than that man's smile when he said those words. He turned away. Tomorrow, I'll tell you what happened when we thought humans couldn't surprise us anymore. And this time, no one breathed. Until he was gone, ChatGPT said, the 6th night fell like the edge of a blade. No one joked anymore. No one called General Threxel's stories exaggerations. His seat at the center of the mess hall had become sacred ground, surrounded by hushed breath, staring eyes, and notebooks filled with scribbled details. Even the highest-ranking strategists on Harkin Station now listened in silence, standing. At the back like cadets. When Threxel arrived, the crowd parted without a word. He looked more exhausted than usual, like each memory dug a little deeper into his armored bones. But when he sat, his voice came out firm, controlled, dangerous. By then, he said, we thought we had seen everything. He didn't bother to explain what then meant. Everyone knew. After Polaris, Aldrin's Reach, Facility 11X, Cradle 6. But what happened on Solrix Prime, Threxel said, was something else, something wrong. He glanced across the room, his voice sharpening. You've all read about it. Acidic atmosphere, coral cliffs, surface storms that peel flesh from bone. The worst place in the quadrant. He looked down at his hands. Which is why we didn't understand when humans volunteered to go there. Several cadets blinked. They requested the assignment, Threxel growled. A full company. 50. Soldiers. No orbital cover. No air support. Just drop pods, sealed suits, and teeth-gritted smiles. Vasha spoke quietly. What were they defending? A communication outpost. Barely operational. Mostly relays and weather sensors. No weapons. We planned to vaporize it within the hour. He paused. Then the laughing started. Even the droids paused now. The room waited. We picked. Up human chatter on our open channels. No encryption. Just jokes, one-liners, banter, They knew we were listening. Threxel's voice dipped into something darker. "Hey, I bet the big crab in charge can't even aim his plasma right," he quoted, imitating a human drawl. 5 credits says I can scare him off with my underwear flag? That sort of nonsense. They were mocking you? Someone asked. They were laughing, Threxel corrected, while suffocating in sealed suits, while their boots melted into the acidic dirt, while storms blew steel plates through the sky like razors. They were laughing. He stood up slowly, deliberately, and it worked. The mess hall felt like the void of space. My troops hesitated. We weren't prepared for joy, for humor, for humans smiling during annihilation. He walked around the table now, his footsteps echoing. The terrain was poison, the cliffs unstable. Our hovercraft crashed. Every movement we made, they turned it into a joke. One human squad painted their armor bright yellow and called themselves the Bees of Doom. Another rigged a speaker to blast Earth music across the battlefield. He stopped pacing. They turned death into a performance. Vaisha spoke. Again, softly. Why? Threxel looked at her eyes hard, voice grim, because fear breaks the mind. But laughter breaks the pattern. He pointed a finger toward her. They weren't laughing because they were safe. They were laughing because they weren't. He returned to his seat, the weight of the moment pulling the entire room downward. The worst part, he said quietly, we didn't kill them. Gasps. They stayed exactly 48 hours, then evacuated on foot through a storm that boiled our flyers from the sky. We lost 12 troops trying to follow. And the humans? Someone asked. They left behind a metal sign, Threxel replied. Welded to the outpost's final relay tower. He took a breath. It said, next time, bring more jokes. We've got new material. Some in the room almost laughed. Almost. No sound came. And that, Threxel said, is when I realized humans aren't fighting for land, or resources, or revenge. He leaned forward, voice suddenly low. They fight because existence itself tries to kill them every day. And instead of crying, they laugh back. He stood up. Tomorrow, I will tell you the last story. The one that changed everything. His compound eyes scanned the room. And you will finally understand why we stopped fearing their weapons and started fearing their hearts. Then he left. No one moved. No one even exhaled. Because somewhere in their minds, they could still hear the laughter, echoing through acid rain, echoing in their bones. The 7th night felt like a ritual. The mess hall was unrecognizable now. The lights had been dimmed deliberately. The seating was tighter, denser, like people instinctively drew closer in preparation for something ancient and final. Even the overhead vents whispered softly, too softly, as if they too were listening. General Threxel entered without his armor tonight. The old Graxian was exposed, his deep purple underplate scored with scars, his upper limbs wrapped in woven cloth. A gesture of peace or mourning. No one dared speak. He sat at the central table in complete silence. Not until the room was still absolutely still did he begin. Titan Field. The words struck like a pulse wave. That's where we stopped thinking of humans as enemies, Threxel said, and started calling them the other thing. He didn't define what that thing was. He didn't need to. We had intelligence that a human fleet was hiding in the debris ring of Titan. Not Titan, the moon Titan field. The asteroid cemetery. Ships from dozens of battles. Wreckage from every war in the last century. A graveyard. His mandibles clicked softly as he exhaled. Only a fool would stage an ambush there, which is exactly why it worked. He glanced at Vasha, who sat with her hands clenched tightly in her lap. They called it Operation Echo Furnace. We only learned the name after it was over. He activated a small hologram on the table. Jagged rocks, broken cruisers, silent void. A navigational nightmare. We detected faint energy readings from within the field. Small, intermittent, a dozen or so ships. We moved in with 3 heavy carriers and 2 flanking squadrons. Careful, slow, tactical perfection. He paused the hologram, looked each cadet in the eyes, and we never left. The silence was no longer reverent, it was grave. They didn't meet us in open space. They didn't fight, not like any of you are trained to expect. Instead, they lured us inward. The hologram shifted, showing alien ships weaving carefully into the field. Invisible mines, broken wreckage. They activated every dead hull, every old warship, every derelict engine. They stitched them together with salvage code. Half of them weren't even flyable, but they moved, twitched, flashed radiation, and our sensors went mad. He deactivated the projection. I was on the Verdict-class carrier Dreschel. 60,000 tons, 17 decks, hundreds of crew, and I watched our guidance systems melt into chaos. He closed his compound eyes. They had turned the battlefield into a hallucination, a ballet of ghosts. A junior officer in the back finally whispered, "Who led them?" Threxel opened his eyes. Admiral Ren Sullivan. Yes, Kate Sullivan, again. Gasps, whispers. But Threxel raised one hand and they stopped. Only this time she didn't command from the bridge. She disappeared. No human officer admitted to knowing her location. No signals came. Not a single order was intercepted. He leaned in, voice now soft and deadly. Because she had put her command into every ship fragment, into every echo. She used false heat signatures, dead comms loops. Emergency pings recorded years ago. We chased shadows. The horror was no longer theatrical. It was infectious. One of our squadron leaders ordered a missile strike on a floating bulkhead. Turned out to be our own ship. Painted, masked, reprogrammed. He looked around. They let us destroy ourselves. The cadets were pale, silent, eyes wide and wet. And just when we tried to retreat, they reactivated gravity wells, modified from mining equipment, pulled half our fleet into collision courses, like they folded the field around us. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. I saw our ships spin. I saw crews vented into the void. I saw my own name appear on a distress beacon that I did not send. Threxel's voice broke now. They were talking to us, in our voices, giving us orders we trusted. He bowed his head. They didn't win the battle. They erased it. We only recovered 40 survivors from 8,000. Someone, somewhere in the room, was weeping quietly. Vasha asked the only question left. What happened to Admiral Sullivan? Threxel raised his head again, slowly. We never confirmed she was there. No footage, no signal, no DNA. Only a handwritten note left inside a dead Graxian captain's escape pod, set adrift at the edge of the system. His voice fell to a whisper. You brought war to ghosts. Don't be surprised when they haunt you. He let the silence hang. She wasn't hunting us. She wasn't even angry. She was teaching. He stood, and I learned. He scanned the sea of hollow faces. Tomorrow, the last story. The war ended, but the truth only began. He turned and walked into the corridor. The lights dimmed as he passed, one by one. No one followed, because no one could chase a ghost like that. On the 8th night, no one spoke before he arrived. The mess hall was filled to its very edges, not just cadets and officers. Now, but station crew, janitors, old war veterans, even a few civilians in borrowed uniforms. The story had spread across Harkin Station like a virus, like a prayer. Everyone needed to know how it ended. General Threxel walked in without ceremony. No armor, no weapons. Just a plain gray cloak draped over his scarred shoulders. His movements were slow tonight, deliberate, as if every step carried weight not seen, but felt. He sat without a word. The room pulsed with silence. He looked down at the table. "This is the last one," he said. "After this, I have nothing more to give." His voice was hollow, not weak, but emptied out. After Titan Field, the war lost momentum. Our fleets withdrew. Our systems went dark. We called it a strategic pause. He looked up at the crowd. It was a surrender in all but name. No one flinched. They had felt it coming for 7 nights. We signed the peace accords aboard Vega Station, neutral ground, cold and sterile, surrounded by stars that watched us like judges. He looked toward Vasha, whose eyes were glassed with tears she didn't understand. I was part of the delegation, not because I wanted peace, but because I needed answers. He inhaled. It was shaky. They sent a human representative, not a soldier, not an admiral, not even a politician. He paused. They sent a child. A ripple of disbelief moved through the crowd, but Threxel held up one hand. Her name was Myra Dow, 13 standard years old, daughter of 2 engineers who died during the Battle of Cygna Prime. She walked in wearing a jacket too big for her and boots that didn't match. And she smiled. He paused for a long time. "I asked to come," she said, "because I have something to give you." Threxel's mandibles tightened. She handed me a box, simple, wooden. Inside were 12 folded flags, each one from a different human ship we destroyed. His voice caught now. He didn't hide it. She said, "We keep the flags of those we lose. We hope you'll remember them too. Because if we can remember pain together, maybe we won't need to cause it again." No one breathed. I asked her why she volunteered to come. "Because my parents taught me that peace is something you plant, not something you wait for." Threxel looked away, his voice nearly gone. I tried to thank her. She said, "Thank me by never making another child deliver this box." He bowed his head. That night, I requested permanent reassignment. I left the front. I stopped giving orders. And I began remembering. He looked up again. "And that's why I tell you these stories." He rose now, slower than before. "Because you will be commanders someday. Generals, diplomats. You will meet humans. And you will fear them. And you should." He walked forward closer to the cadets than ever before. But not because of their guns, or their tactics, or their technology. He looked at Vasha, at all of them. Fear them because they still love after the fire. Fear them because they teach their children to forgive before they teach them to aim. Fear them because they could destroy everything and choose not to. Again and again. He looked around. "I have nothing more to say except this." He drew a folded flag from beneath his cloak. Human. Worn. "I keep this not because I won, but because I learned." He placed it on the table and turned to go. Never underestimate the species that writes lullabies after battles, that builds homes atop ruins, that names their dead, and still dreams of peace. As he reached the door, he paused one last time. "And if you're lucky, if you're wise, you'll remember, the deadliest thing in the galaxy isn't a human with a gun. It's a human with hope." Then General Threxel left the hall, and the silence that followed would last a lifetime.